How can we make sense of the future of software development and the path a new tech startup founder has to follow? This week, we're taking a deep dive into AI's role in software development and how people-minded founders can help us design the human experience into the future. To help us make sense of it all, my guest this week is Lindsey Witmer Collins, the founder of WLCM App Studio, an Inc. magazine Best in Business title holder for companies that put purpose before profit. Yes, we love that. Her studio's apps have won national product awards. They've earned placements by iTunes and Apple TV's Planet of the Apps, and they've been named a world-changing idea by Fast Company. That's a ton of accolades. There's no better person to have on for this conversation. But first, welcome to this week's episode of Make Sense, a video podcast that simplifies complex issues at the intersection of tech and people. There are a lot of them. So whether you're totally hyped on artificial intelligence and you're ready for the robot takeover, or you want to crawl into a cave after deleting all of your social media accounts, I'm here with my guests to help make sense of what's going on so you can design yourself into the future. My name is Lindsay Tabis. I'm a product market fit strategist, innovation consultant, and venture fundraising advisor. If you're new here, subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. So let's make sense of the future of software development. Lindsay with an E, how are you?
Lindsay with an A, I'm doing great.
It's awesome. So did I do a good job with that bio?
Well, fun fact about that bio. So you mentioned it's okay. Apple TV's first ever show that they produced, their first original content ever on Apple TV was a show called Planet of the Apps, wherein app founders would pitch their idea to a panel of experts, which was celebrity experts. Gwyneth Paltrow, Jessica Alba, and will.i.am.
Okay, so all celebrities with like businesses of their own.
Yeah, yes. And entrepreneur celebrities. And I was on that show. And actually, the first split second of the first episode of Planet of the Apps is myself and Amy, who's one of the startup founders who I work with, going like, taking a deep breath.
Yes.
The first second of the first episode of the first show ever produced by Apple TV. So that's my claim to fame.
That is amazing. I hope we see more of your products on TV, maybe on Shark Tank or otherwise, and you can tell us more about it today or about the things that you've worked on. I want to like slip in my own fun fact, which is that Gwyneth Paltrow went to my summer camp in Vermont. And all the cabins, we were allowed to write all over them. So there were a few times over the course of 3 summers where I could, see her own graffiti from the 70s and early 80s.
That's awesome.
Super cool. Okay. I want to share something with the Make Sense listeners. Behind the scenes, I ask guests to share something that is making them laugh. Lindsay, do you remember what you shared with me?
Yes, the teenagers attempt to chug a
soda water
soda without burping. Yeah.
And the immediate impact of that poor decision overcomes him so much that he yells, "What do I do?" and then runs into his garage, knocking his head on the door. I find it hilarious because one of my favorite subreddits is titled "Why Women Live Longer." What is funny about it to you?
My favorite moment is when he starts it off and he's like, "You think you're so cool, but can you do this challenge?" And then he chugs it. And he's like so confident the whole time. And then he doesn't burp yet, but he just, "Oh my God, what do I do?" Like totally helpless, scared look kind of overcomes him. There's just major shift
in energy.
And then he burps. It's great. And then he turns around and I like slapstick humor, and he whacks his head and falls over, and it's a classic.
That's awesome. We'll make sure to include that in the show notes for any of you that aren't sure which clip we're talking about, but you've got to see it. So are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
All right, so our first segment, Crystal Ball, what does the future hold? So this is where I call out interesting predictions for this year, and my experts, or the experts, my guess, tell us their hot take. I'm going to rapid fire some headlines, and Lindsay, I want you to say, like, either yes, that's happening because you know it's happening, or no, that's not happening. Or if you don't know anything about it, yes, I want that to happen, or no,
Mhm.
please no.
Okay.
Okay. All right. You ready? I think these are
Mhm.
all in your wheelhouse, so you can tell us if they're happening or not happening.
Sure.
All right.
Okay.
First trend, secret invasion of the super apps. So, massive clash of super app level platforms vying to dominate consumers' online lives. So, we're talking, Meta, WhatsApp,
Already happened.
WhatsApp, Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already happened.
Yeah.
Immediate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think some of the interest stats are, 40% of young people in the US are using TikTok and Instagram to find places to eat over Google search and maps. Did you know that? I had no idea.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
Um, I'm not a part of the TikTok universe, but I understand that it's big and influential. So
right.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Like Meta wants to bring, shopping into WhatsApp, and
Hmm.
Google has integrated with Shopify to bring live shopping onto YouTube.
So what I think is really interesting about shopping, I think shopping's like, I mean, it's a key thing that we do all the time. Every human has to buy things sometimes, and we don't want to waste our money. We don't want to buy something that ends up not being worth the amount of money we paid for it. Um, and we want to get something that's really well suited to us.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time, we're shopping digitally, so we're not actually touching, feeling, or trying things on. And if we do make a decision that's wrong and we order something, we don't end up liking it, there's a cost to returning it. So it feels like it's higher stakes shopping in a way. And so I actually think this is a really interesting space to watch. I'm personally a player in it.
Mm-hmm.
Building an app called That Thing I Told You About, or TYA, and you can get on the invite invite list. It's at toldyouabout.com. We might pull you into some beta tests, but that's about how like you want to take the recommendations from certain people. You're gonna like really trust that. Like if you want to ask your group of friends about like what kind of mascara should I buy? Like, do you have a favorite? Like, what should I get my husband for his birthday? Like,
Right.
anybody getting good husband gifts lately? And so we're already having those conversations. And anyway, this is like a platform for organizing that and
Yeah.
also doing matchmaking.
Okay.
Um, and I think, and now we're also talking, we're actually devising ways to add generative AI to that, and also AI to the matchmaking portion of those
Okay.
products, which I think
Yeah.
will be really exciting. Like you could find somebody who is really similar to you, whose taste you're going to trust, who may or may not be an influencer. Like in my life, I'm like, I don't really necessarily want to follow I'm not an influencer,
Yeah.
so you sort of want to. Anyway, I do think social commerce is a really exciting space. A friend of mine launched an app called Miss Tyler, and it like matches you with people who have the same body type as you do, and you see what they're wearing.
I
Um,
was just gonna, bring up that use case.
mhm.
I like to shop secondhand. I'm on Poshmark, cannot figure out who of these other users, have the same style, but also, height, size, all of that. And so that is awesome. There's like I'm a 5'2", so there's not too many like short and curvy women in the influencer checklist, like directory that are my size.
But
So
there are a lot of women who are your size, and but they might not be like directly around you. You might not have them as physical friends in your life, and they might not, but like, how do we find those people for
Yeah.
you? That's actually like, I think, really exciting. And as much as it's shopping, I don't think it's materialistic
Yeah.
so
Well,
much.
there's a human connection, hopefully, to it as well.
Yeah, and we're reducing the amount of returns. We're reducing the amount of like crap, cheap stuff that we're buying. Because well, that's my hope. But I'm
Yeah.
always pretty up. Yeah, that's just the way I roll. Yeah.
I love it. A lot of people were thrown into shopping e-commerce because of the pandemic and do
Mhm.
prefer like the touch and feel. And so the more real or the more information we can create, like provide about products, uh,
Mhm.
is super helpful. So we'll look for seeing Spotify and YouTube's integration, and we'll look
Yeah.
for, your the couple apps you mentioned. What is it? The tellmeabout.com,
Told you about.com.
toldyouabout.com, and
Yeah.
Miss Tyler,
Miss
right?
Tyler. Yeah.
So we'll look for those and we'll put those in the show comments too. So, next trend, artificial intelligence will not replace you, but a person using it will.
A person using AI will replace me.
So often,
Okay. Got
like,
it. Yeah.
right,
Me
like
personally or just people in general?
general, not you personally.
Um,
But basically, when we've talked about this a bunch on Make Sense, is like the future of work and will people lose their jobs in the immediate future, like in the next year, right? And the statement is that AI is unlikely to take your job in the next year, but someone that knows how to use AI better than you will have better chances.
yeah, I really do think that it's important to not let the AI trend happen without really like paying attention to it and dialing in on like, how can I use this? How can this be a booster pack for me, for my team?
100.
Um, there's no like, you don't want to turn a blind eye to it and be like, oh, that you can't brush it aside. I think we've all got to be leveraging it as much as we can. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Often we don't really talk on Make Sense about Chat GPT, but are there any other AI tools that you see that are really taking up more space in people's kind of daily activities?
Yeah. So, well, personally, I'm interested in generative AI. Well, I'm having fun with it. I'm like just essentially, well, not just me, but there's like a couple of people within Welcome, and we just have like a little working group and we play with it essentially. I'm just like,
When
what?
you say generative AI, so for like to make sense and simplify stuff, what do you mean by generative AI specifically versus maybe just AI?
It's AI that creates.
Mm,
So, yeah, so I'm going to be at App Growth Summit September 14th. If anybody's going to be in San Francisco, let me know. And we're talking about marketing. So I am moderating a panel with Sarah, who founded Ms. Tyler.
mm-hmm.
She's doing, she has really great stories about using generative AI in marketing to generate ads, to test, to
Cool.
generate copy. Um, copy.ai is something that one of my clients is using to generate an ASO optimized app store description.
Got it.
Um, we use Code GPT, where it becomes super helpful to us as a team. So we're interested in anything that's going to make us more efficient so that we can deliver faster or better. Um, in the case where it's the most helpful to us is when we inherit a project that has really messy code that's essentially unreadable, and CodeGPT can make it more readable.
Okay.
Kind of help us find problems,
All right.
which can be
Cool.
just an absolute nightmare. This, when you inherit code, it can just be like the worst nightmare of your life,
Yeah.
trying to just figure out how to fix a little thing, but it's just like, where is
We're
that?
gonna we're gonna continue that conversation. Don't
Yeah.
don't tell us everything yet. In the next segment, we're gonna
All
talk
right.
about
Yeah, I see it being
that.
used there. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So the next trend kind of flows naturally that AI powered code generators will have a profound effect on developers' productivity. So, particularly automating repetitive and time consuming code tasks, developers will be able to focus their energy and expertise on higher level activities.
Hmm.
Is that happening?
Well, I see it really helping to maybe like replace the work of like a junior coder, like something that doesn't really require. So there's like a strategic and creative mind that we have that is we understand the context of a product. We can do business
And
analysis.
by you mean guess your team, but humans in general too.
Yes,
Right.
humans in
We have a
general.
strategic mindset.
Right. Yes, this is what's really particular to us as people, especially if we're like really smart and high functioning people. And I think in the particular context that I'm in, we are able to see the whole picture of what a company is trying to do and how can we best solve that and how are we going to design an experience and how are we going to solve some like really difficult problems. And then we can kind of put some of these AIs to work, to do some like more menial tasks. So,
Hmm.
like getting rid of, trying to think of a good metaphor. Maybe like, you don't need somebody to sweep your floors or to do it yourself. Now you have a little robot vacuum.
Right. Exactly.
It's kind of like the equivalent, but
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a perfect example or metaphor for it. It's like you could sweep or you could put the Roomba down and let it do it for you. Right.
Yeah. And then you use less time, you get the job done faster, you get it done cheaper, everybody's happier.
So do you think we've yet experienced the profound effect on developers' productivity, or we're still like working towards it? The tools, have they had that effect yet, or are the tools still maturing and it might happen in another year or two or longer?
I don't know that there's never going to, who knows, right? Like, I don't know where the upper limit is on this stuff. But right now, it's like, I can't just say, like, hey, create an app for this person for their
Yeah,
products. Go, you
right.
know? Like,
Define profound. Like, what is profound?
yeah, yeah. So like all the parameters need to be set and figured out and like the higher level strategy and reasoning, the conversations that you would have with someone, the conversations that you would
Right.
have with users to help sort of guide your process.
Hmm.
It's almost like you provide the strategy and AI can do some of the tactical work for you, but you have to sort of say, here, this is what I want you to do,
Yeah.
you know.
It's still like a hand, like a push vacuum, not a Roomba.
Sure. Yeah. A little bit more about that. Like, I don't. I feel like we've got an imperfect metaphor here. Maybe.
Okay, well, the trend is like, automating repetitive and time consuming coding tasks. So if it's helping with a lot of things that junior developers might be relegated to doing, then it sounds like it's definitely on its way. So
Mhm.
this brings us to the last trend, which is that software engineering will become more commoditized. So AI's ability to automate processes and generate insights and learn from vast amounts of data has led to, and you tell me if this is true, a significant decrease in the time and resources required to develop software?
Well, it depends on how much AI is being leveraged for the
Hmm.
code and how skilled the developers are in leveraging it. I think that it's much easier to just do the work than to spend the time figuring out how to use AI to do it. um,
Right.
but I do think it's worth putting in the legwork to figure out how this can work for you. Um, but I just don't think coding, some people would say that coding already is a commodity. Um, and I see it commodified often. So a lot of dev shops are basically like, I call them code machines. So
Right.
there will be somebody based in Brazil, India, wherever, and they are trying to make money off of developers. And so they get developers from anywhere. They ask them what their stack is. So, what's their language? And then they sell those developers at an with mark up the price and sell it for a profit.
Right.
So that's very normal in our industry, and that's sort of like the commoditized version of development work. It doesn't work all that well, and I
No, it does
highly
not.
recommend never doing that, because for 1,000 reasons. But the dynamics of a team, the relationships between team members, their project manager, their QA person, um, the way that they're just how good they are at the work. And is this person just, a lot of times what you're incentivized to do in a code machine model is sell at the highest markup you possibly can. So
Right.
you're going to put a junior and charge a senior if you can get away with it, if the other party doesn't know better. Um, and so I think there's that does happen, but I think that if you want to be with a partner that you trust, which is true and everything,
100%.
you
I
know.
often use another imperfect kind of analogy, which is if you think of software developers as construction workers building
Yeah.
buildings, okay, maybe if this is just a run of the mill house that you need built, a single page website or a WordPress installation, maybe that code machine works, right? There,
Hmm.
maybe. I'm
Hmm.
saying maybe, which is
Hmm.
generous. I can tell by
Hmm.
your face you
Yeah.
agree too. It's
Well,
generous to say maybe. It
yeah.
can work, right? But most of us, when engaging with development partners, are building multi use like shopping complexes. Like we're building something that has to appeal to a variety of people, that has to be designed to serve a specific purpose and provide an experience. And we can get into this later in the final segment, but you know, your first step is not just to talk to a software developer. You need a lot of other inputs in order to like to even design that building. So you don't want to go to a code machine that is going to take all the stuff for your, again, like think of a multi-use building in downtown San Francisco, New York, any city that has to have retail, office space, and residential. There's a lot to think about right there, you know?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, and important decisions to make about the experience of the product, aligning it with your brand and your voice and what you want to get out of it. Just turning a concept or an idea, executing it into like the best version
yeah.
of it in a product that you possibly can, which is extremely um, important. I mean, it's everything. You're
Yeah.
you're you're going to succeed or fail not based on the quality of your idea, but on how well you execute on
Execute.
it. And it's a winners take all business in the app space. So you really want to do it in the best way you can do it. Yeah.
So for this trend about software engineering becoming more commoditized. Um, right now, there's efforts to commoditize software engineering, but if you view it that way, you're developing probably low quality products. And you should be cautious to any founders out there that are thinking about hiring developers. Uh, that are super cheap. You get what you pay for, and it's really not ready to be a pure commodity.
Yeah, I really think like I think construction is the best metaphor for all of this. So maybe we've like locked into our metaphor here.
I
And this
locked into this
is where,
metaphor when in like 2006. I've been going for it.
well, that's funny. So I have a guide called How to Get Software Built, and the whole thing is written using house building as the
Great,
motif.
great. So
So I
then we've
think
been
we're
thinking
right.
alike.
Yes, great minds.
Yeah.
So I think about it as, do you want a skilled craftsperson or just somebody who put their name on Angie's list and is going to slap it
Mhm.
together? Um, and then I think what AI is are the tools.
Mhm. Yep.
Like there's a better drill that will get it done faster, that magnetizes, that whatever. And so, like, you want to have the best tools
Yeah.
in your toolkit that you possibly can, but is that ever going to replace the person on the other end wielding it? No, like
No.
somebody has to wield it. And so we just learn how to wield the tools.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like having someone with a handsaw versus like a power saw.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you
Cool.
might make a machine that can like do the job, wield the tool and like put the thing together. If you're able to do that fully end to end, then it's probably a small piece of a much broader puzzle.
Mhm.
Like, oh, we can do um, like a sign in process for you. Great, do
Great.
it. And then I'll go in and customize it,
Right.
and then
Right.
maybe that'll work, but that's not going to be our whole product.
I hear you. So let's go into our second segment, deep dive. I feel like we've already been there, but we'll keep going. So in this segment, we get into the details about a specific technology's implications for everyday people. So
Okay.
we're going to continue to get technical here, Lindsay, and continue the conversation about AI tools and the future of software development. So, in a post on Welcome Studios Journal, you wrote about using AI to ensure high code quality. The post started because you expressed concern that AI's promise of perfect results with just one click makes some developers believe they can do anything without expertise, right? So this goes back to
Mhm.
exactly what you just said, which is like, sure, anyone can wield a power tool, but do you want a craftsperson or do you want some guy who just bought one yesterday, right? So I want you to explain first, in your simplest terms, what is code quality?
Quality code is simple and it's lightweight, it's fast, it's easy. So it will complete a process like this,
Mm-hmm.
not like this.
You can tell like that code quality is high when you don't have to think too hard about the thing that you're interacting with as a user. You can, but also code quality, like to extend the metaphor of the building, is it's the integrity of the building,
Uh-huh.
right? That
Yeah. So what I would say is as a user, you might not know that it's poor code quality.
right.
And and as the founder, you will discover it as you start to try to build on top of it that this foundation is effed. And but somebody, a developer, could complete the work as described. Look, it's a floor. You can stand on it, and it's the color that you wanted it to be. Done. My job is done. And then you come to find out, like, well, it's actually super slippery. There's like nails sticking out everywhere. I tried to build a wall over here and it just sank right down. Why is that? Because like a floor isn't a floor isn't a floor. Like there are ones that are well
Yeah.
constructed and some that aren't. And you can get away with or be fooled by poor quality code for a long time. It depends on how long, based on when you try to do something else with it. That's when it will start to reveal itself as being like just janky and difficult. So like poor code, poor quality code is difficult to build on top of because there are lots of hidden dependencies. Like it's overly complicated and heavy.
Yeah.
So it's hard if you try to fix, like when we were talking about Code GPT, you're trying to fix something and you can't figure out where that error is because the code is almost unreadable. Yeah.
It's it's like I'm a homeowner. You know, simple task when I bought my house was to ground my electrical system
Mhm.
and clean up the switchboard, the breaker board. But then I find out that the system and the roof is knob and tube, which I have a 100-year-old house, so it's a very old electrical system, and there's breakers that are totally overloaded. And in order to clean that up, it becomes, what
Expensive.
I thought $1,000 project turns into a $5,000 to $10,000,
Yeah.
redo.
That's a great metaphor for how, so what we call that is technical debt.
Yep.
So the longer you go without solving that problem, it actually becomes more and more and more expensive to fix.
Right.
So there's a calculation to make. If somebody hands you poor code quality, of course you didn't know that you bought that, but here you go. And now you have to figure out what to do with it. And then there's that question of, well, do I try to refactor it? Like, do I try to fix what is there, or do I just rebuild it right from the start? And
Yeah.
that's a tough call.
So
Yeah.
you wrote a LinkedIn post recently around poor quality code and how it's like inheriting a disastrously messy closet. Do you pull everything out of the closet and organize with a fresh perspective, or do you redo one shelf at a time? And just small footnote, when we use the term refactor, which is a term heavy in software development, language, is that would be redoing one shelf at a time, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, uh, what kinds of business conditions create an environment where an engineering team creates poor quality code? One is the heavy commoditization of just code machines. But where do
Yeah.
businesses find themselves, like, for instance, like rushed launches, right? We just have to build this feature to sign this one new client, and you just shove a new feature into the app.
Uh-huh.
What other times do you see where, like, there's really we are going to create a mess, or we are inheriting this mess? How did this happen?
How it happens from the actual code creation side could be because you have, I think the foundation is that you have underqualified developers, poorly skilled people who don't understand all of the best practices or like solid coding principles um, through which to build. So they're just more like maverick coders, like, independent developers can be that way or become that way if they've always only coded by themselves and not, or maybe are self-taught. That can create like a high risk situation for code that cannot really be inherited or worked on by anyone else, or code that's just messy because they don't, it's like, well, nobody's going to see this room, so who cares. um, so that can be the case. Also, if you don't have maybe good QA relationship that's ongoing throughout the process, or yeah, I
QA
think
is
it has to
quality assurance for anyone that's listening and doesn't
do
know.
quality assurance, yeah, or a well-managed process, internal code reviews. So like you just have somebody who's just building on their own without someone else reviewing their code.
I want
Um,
to ask you a question, and it's kind of it's a little bit of a side detour. Something I think about a lot is along this conversation of can developers be commoditized? Can AI help speed up our work? The theme that we hear over and over again is like you still have to be skilled. You have to be well trained.
mhm,
Um,
mhm,
you know, working with others helps to develop that skill too. Uh, in our world, the term engineer is given to some workers kind of willy nilly. Like it doesn't have certifications like it does in other engineering fields, like civil engineering. Like you have to have a professional engineering degree to work on a bridge, right?
mhm.
In the software world, a self taught person coming out of a boot camp could be called an engineer.
Well, they could call themselves an engineer, but I don't think anybody else would necessarily. I mean, unless they really are. Like
But
maybe
job
they're really
titles
great.
are like give them out, right? So companies just give them out. Do you think opposing this, can we commoditize software engineers? Are there certain applications where we need to certify the engineers working on them? Like we need the opposite level of commodity. We need to ensure the people working on these technical platforms, whether it be financial platforms, government security, healthcare, that they are actually certified engineers working on it.
Well, I think that that definitely comes into play. So in our my personal use case, it's I have a little universe that's mine. This is like the welcome team, and we have certain standards, and we interview to certain standards, and we hold them, and they're industry best practices largely. So typically, somebody who wasn't formally trained will not end up being a good fit because it will be harder for them to like start doing things the right way,
Right.
because sometimes it can feel, oh, that's so laborious to just be so organized about it. It's like, well, we need to be so organized about it. So, you
Because
know,
we create clean code with high quality. Right.
yeah, so there's a way to do it. I think, you know, in other use cases, so I was talking to somebody who works with medical devices, and there are certain compliances related to that, FDA approval, and coding for FDA approval is a particular skill set
Yeah.
and knowledge base. And so if you were needing to code something for FDA approval, you would want to make sure that they have, may if not certification, like demonstrated experience.
Right.
And not only, oh, their team has it, but like the person who's working on your team has it.
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, there are ways to kind of ask for that yourself if you have a specialty case.
Yeah. Right now, it's very choose your own adventure. It's up to whoever's doing the hiring and building the team to decide which level of quality they want to, perform at. And there's no such thing, for instance, if I wanted to file a do business as the lady engineer in Pennsylvania, I have to have a professional engineering license. You
Mm-hmm.
there's none of that yet in software development. And I
Mm-hmm.
wonder if there ever will be, or if there are certain cases where there should be.
Yeah. I think security is one too, where
Security concerns me a lot. That's
you
the
don't,
voice.
yeah, you don't want to go, the other thing about using maybe like no code tools is you don't really have control over the security of that data.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to know what they're doing,
Yeah.
and that's why we have these SOC 2, ISO
All these
compliances
standards, right?
where it's like, here's these defined standards. You need to jump through these 500 hoops in order to get it. And then once you have that badge, everybody can be assured that you're working at that quality standard.
Yeah.
Um,
So we have
and
some of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
So in our final segment, we've kind of already gotten there. We're doing tech talk, headline, hype versus reality. So, technology moves super fast, or at least the news likes to tout that it's moving super fast, but sometimes it is kind of far from reality, or it's just far more nuanced. So in this segment, I grab an interesting headline that we're going to talk through. And the headline for many years now has been the barriers to market entry for tech startups are lower than ever. So, yeah, there are a lot of no code and low code tools that founders, don't necessarily have to be software developers themselves just to get started. But there's a ton of nuance behind it. Is it really like easier than ever to just get into tech startups? Or get
No,
into it, fine, but being successful at it, you know?
I think the barrier to entry is very high because it's really expensive to get something built well, and that's still true. So even if you can use these low code, no code tools, you'll get rid of the expense, but you won't get the quality. And
Right,
if you don't have the quality, your chances of success are not good.
right. You can
Um,
only go so far.
yes, and if you don't understand how, I think maybe if you are a super experienced, passionate user experience designer, you might be able to figure out how to use those tools, how to basically navigate them to create something that's great. Maybe. I
Yeah,
think what you'll actually find is that you can't.
yeah. You might
But
be able to create the first version to show potential investors. Not many people get funded off of just a version built for investors. So, if you want something that users can actually use repetitively, you
yeah,
know,
I'm trying to think of a business worth investing in that could be built on a tool like that, only because the things that you can do, the functionalities are so limited and basic.
yeah,
If you're trying to build a new startup that's software based, you are going to be doing something differently. That's the whole point.
right, right.
So the likelihood one of these things is going to work for you is low. If you're not starting a software startup and you just want an app for your Pilates studio, something like this might work really well for you. So I don't want to poo poo it totally. I will say we wrote a whole post about low, no quality tools. And I just didn't want to publish it because I was like, there's a lot. I don't want to sound like I'm just saying these are like pieces of crap tools, but I also don't want to talk about what they can do. I was like, I don't know. Yeah, it was just hard for me to take a stand
Just
on
take
it.
a
So
stance is
I much prefer to have a conversation about it. Yeah.
right. The one team of founders that I work with that, built their first version of the app, and again, prototype, used Glide, which is a no code tool that you can just import a Google Sheet and it'll give you the tools to make it searchable and make, each record in a spreadsheet look, presentable or something. So you could take a people directory and just put it into an app. Then their second version, they decided to go with Bubble, which is more of a low code tool, but to meet security standards, they're like database of the personal information each user, stores on it is actually outside a bubble to
Mhm.
meet the security standards, right? So it's not like bubble is the perfect solution to take a product to the market. You still need expertise,
Mhm.
to help you meet the types of standards that build trust in your
Yeah,
audience with your audience.
yeah, and you want to kind of keep your eye on technical debt. Like
Mhm.
I
Back to
know
this
that,
issue again of like
yeah,
messy closets, messy wiring systems. Yeah.
yeah. So you might decide, I've got to get this done right now. I don't have the resources. I understand I'm going to have to redo it later. I'm okay with it. But you just want to be clear-eyed when you are making these decisions that you will probably have to redo it later and, be okay with that.
Nothing's worse than talking to a founder that has spent a ton of money building something and then realizing that they can't scale it from where they are, and they are mad, right? They are mad because this wasn't information that they understood
Hmm.
so ahead of time. So the answer isn't to just hire a developer when you have an idea, and it isn't just learn how to use any of these tools, because there's a bigger question that how does a founder know that their product idea is even worth building?
Yeah, that's the most important thing to figure
Right.
out at the start.
I've
I
spent
mean,
months, like I've spent months like back in 2011 teaching myself or relearning PHP. And a year later I could realize that I spent 3 months learning PHP, not building a business, like not validating the product idea, right? So sorry, I interrupted. You go.
yeah, yeah, I think validating the product idea is really important. I think it's something that you can do a gut check to some extent on as well. Is like, is this product requiring somebody to do something that they don't already do? Like, is it introducing a new behavior? If so, your likelihood of success is lower. The cliff is steeper. If you're doing something, you're addressing something that people are already doing habitually, but you're making it easier for them to do that thing, then your barrier to success is lower. Um, Sometimes, if you're creating something that helps people achieve something they need to achieve versus something that they want to achieve, it's going to be easier in the
That's
want.
the vitamin painkiller conversation. So if there's something they want to solve, they need to solve, right? That's the painkiller. Then it'll be more successful. And what you said, just to repeat it, if you are just supporting something they already do regularly and your tool is going to make it easier, right?
Yeah.
Like your code copy AI, is that it? No, code GPT that
Mhm.
like can scan all of this messy code and pick out the problem areas or help you locate areas
Mhm.
that you need to work on. Like that is something you're already doing with your eyeballs, and now it's just making it a little faster. To be more successful, you can speed people up the activities that they're already doing over trying to change anyone's habits, because we are awful at creating new habits and breaking old
Oh
ones.
yeah, and if your product is going to need somebody needs to learn in order to use it, lower likelihood. So like how easy can it be to use? There's a product that I'm helping somebody on right now, and their concept is great. Cannot really talk about what it is for NDA reasons. But the way that they conceived of the product when they came to me, so it's a very compelling idea, was basically, let's have people come into a room and we have a piece of paper and then we have all these different tools that they can use to create art, let's say. um, that's not going to succeed first of all, you have to convince people to come into the room. Second, that they want to create art, which is a part of that discussion. And then they have to learn how to use all the tools.
Right.
In the founder's mind, it's like, well, this is a super cool thing to do, and I'm going to give you lots of ways to do it. So a more successful approach might be convince them that they want to do this thing. That's the hard part, okay? But it's a compelling thing. They decide they want to do it. Then you say, so like an onboarding sequence, okay, so specifically what do you want to help with this to help you achieve out of these 4 things? Option 2, great.
Mm-hmm.
The best way to do that would be to use our painting tool.
Mm-hmm.
About twice a week, let's make a plan. I'm going to do this on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 a.m. Great. We're going to let you know, and then we're going to get painting at 9 a.m., whatever. So I wish I could actually talk about what this product actually is. It would make a lot more
But
sense.
I think what you're saying, though, is like if you give a kid like one toy to learn how to play versus dumping out an entire toy chest in front of them, right? Like it's overwhelming what to do with all of those.
And people don't want to put in the effort. They don't.
No.
So,
Especially if it's something that they're being convinced to do. If it's
mhm,
something that they want to do or need to do, they will put in the effort, right? We will go on irs.gov and fill out our taxes because we need to do it. So we will go through some poor usability hurdles to get that done. But if this is a fun activity and you're convincing me that it should be fun, it needs to be fun the whole time.
The whole time.
Yeah. The whole time, right?
Especially initially, yeah.
Yeah. So if a founder really wants to be part of kind of, designing the future to be easier for people, to like solve real problems, like what is that process like in the early days,
Sure.
How do they have to do things differently?
Yeah, I'm thinking about a situation. My kids go to a Montessori school, and I'm trying to help them improve their technology. So I'm thinking, like, this morning, I had a conversation with somebody at their school who's like really concerned that by making these processes easier, it will somehow, anyway, but that's a whole different situation. If you are a founder and you have a great idea, congratulations. It's keeping you up on all night. You know this is a great idea. You're probably right. And probably a dozen other people have the same idea, which shouldn't dissuade you. It's just something to know. So now, in order to execute on this idea, produce the product for people that they're going to love, we need to be really smart and strategic about how we design the experience of your product and how it does the things you want it to do, and minimize all the different things that it can do. Kind of get to the point of like, what does this do? And then how do we do it in the best way possible? I think a lot of founders will come to me with a list of features like a mile long, and it's the same as like sitting down with a piece of paper and having all these different things. It can be,
it's
it can
overwhelming.
actually hurt you rather than help you, and it's more costly. So yeah,
I think this is where the construction metaphor breaks down, I think, in software development, because if you're building a multi-use complex in downtown San Francisco, like you need to design the whole thing, right? But in software development, we actually are like, okay, you want this building to have retail, office, and residential. We're going to build one unit of each of these first to see our users like experience this. And maybe it actually does work if we talk about like model homes in a housing development, right? The model gets built and people can experience it and then start to, add on to it, right? And so I like what you said, you have to focus on, what's that one tool
what are you helping
Start
people
with.
to achieve?
Right.
And being super clear on what that is, and that that is worthwhile, and that
Yeah.
people want that
Right.
and are looking for it. And if they're not, like, once they see it, they'll be like, oh, wow.
Right.
Like I wasn't looking for copy.ai. And then I went to it and I was like, well, wow, this is
Yeah.
frightening. How can I use this? Um, so anyway, that was the side note. Um, so get really clear, distill it down to what you're trying to help your user achieve. That's more important than having a lot of features. It's not about the features. It's about that, helping them achieve that thing in an easy, frictionless process that makes their lives better. And achieving that product, a beautiful, like perfect product design is
Yeah.
really, really hard. You can't do it if you're an amateur. You
Right.
should work with a professional. And even then, you're going to be iterating. So you're going to want to show it to users, maybe at the wireframe stage, maybe farther on, full color stage. Ask them some questions, get their feedback. When I was designing that thing I told you about, um, I thought initially that I had the perfect design. I was like pretty sure it was great. And I showed it to
That's when
three
you should be the
people.
most scared.
Yeah, I showed it to three people, all of whom were very kind and very positive, and tried not to say a negative word, which is tough for me because I really wanted the negative words, but I could hear, they would just make this comment here or there, and I was like, "Oh, I need to totally rethink the way that I was approaching this or that,
Yeah.
even whether this was web or mobile based." And um, it, the flow of adding a list or adding a product or whatever, like that whole thing needs to be really,
Yeah.
a lot of things had to be rethought. So it's painful, but better to do that in the design stage rather than later.
The worst trait of any designer, literally, if your title is designer or if you're a founder dreaming up your solution, the worst trait is to be stubborn, right? Because
Mhm.
other people have to use your product, interact with your product, and you might love the way it's designed and think it's intuitive
Mhm.
yourself. But if other people don't, then your only potential customer is yourself. So if
Yeah.
you want to design a product that customers will actually use and buy and love, you have to do the listening all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. You might be your user. You should be your user. I hope you are your user. But you're not all of your users.
No.
So you really do need to have some more voices come in.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. We can end on listen to your users because that is how you design products that make people's lives easier, is if you take the time to listen.
Yeah. Yeah, and a friend of mine, I forget who said this. Somebody said this at a conference somewhere, and a friend of mine told me that users cannot be predicted, they can only be observed.
Right.
It's super helpful
Yeah.
to observe them. Yeah, post launch as well, of course. Yeah, so you
Of-
can be agile.
Always. You should be observing and listening throughout the whole process. So, let's make it make sense. All right, we ended on this keynote of like, you've got to listen to people, but we spent a lot of time talking about the future of software engineering and whether we think that it can be commoditized or will be. People are trying, but that doesn't mean it's working. We've got some AI tools that are having a great effect on our productivity, whether it's profound and we've been able to cut team members, we're probably not there yet either. Again, there's a lot of nuance, and we always say this with AI tools as well. It's like, use your brain. You have to bring your strategic, empathetic, compassionate, problem solving person brain to the table if you want to get the most out of AI tools. So Thank you for listening to Make Sense with me, your host, Lindsay Tabus, and guest, Lindsey Witmer Collins. We hope you enjoyed our take on software development and AI tools. Lindsay, where can people find you online? Do you want them to find you online?
Yes. So I'm on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. And our website is welcome.studio with no vowels. So WLCM.studio.
Cool. That's awesome. We'll make sure to get those links and resources in the show notes. So, final note, if you want to continue to be the smartest person in the room, obviously make sure you're getting notified when each episode hits on YouTube. Hit that subscribe for next week's episode or follow wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, Lindsay, for joining me.
Thank you. Bye, friend.